Dave here, and we've got a new episode in the art review series. And today we're going to check out the work of Jama Jurabaev, and he's actually one of my favorite artists. He does a lot of 3D work, and as you can see in his ArtStation portfolio, he does a lot of like sculpting. And I do know he does a lot of, or use a lot of programs, but I believe a lot of his sculpting stuff comes from Blender, or he uses Blender a lot for that kind of thing. And but I'm not going to be focusing on his 3D stuff. I think I'm more fascinated by his 2D work because, again, I do classify, I identify as a 2D artist, and I don't know, I just like his paintings and sketches. He's very impressionistic, which I like. He's not a rendering kind of guy. Like, he finely details his paintings, at least when it comes to his 2D work. So that is what appeals to me. So I did take a lot of his or the stuff we're going to explore today comes mostly from his website. And because in his ArtStation portfolio, he doesn't have everything in it, and I think it's kind of limited to an extent. I will be providing the link to his website in the description below. He also has an Instagram, so no worries. I'll provide everything in the description below. So yeah, he does have a very, at least for his 2D, we're going to focus mostly on, or 100,000% on his 2D paintings. And he's very, again, impressionistic, and you can see a lot of his brushstrokes, which I do like. And again, with the way he paints, he doesn't detail his stuff, right? For example, in this kind of Viking guy, he does kind of refine the edge of the helmet and a bit of the form of the nose, but everything else is kind of just painterly. And he does this thing where even though he's kind of painterly with his brushstrokes, and the brushes themselves are kind of traditional looking, he does blur some of the edges, especially in the areas kind of that's not really the main focus. And I'm kind of wary of that kind of approach, because I feel like you're taking away the effects of the brush strokes that you've made beforehand. Because I do want to maintain the textures that come from the actual painting, and by blurring kind of like the edges or the background, you're kind of taking away that richness in the canvas. You can always kind of make things not as important by kind of using the mixer brush, or just reducing the amount of detail, or bringing down the values, right? There's so many other ways to kind of create some kind of focus without having to use the blur, but he does use it, and it's not so bad. But for me, I do want to maintain, for example, I do want to be able to see the background strokes that he actually made, and by blurring it is kind of it does create some focus, but I personally would not go for the blur effect. Shit. And yeah, he does have, I believe he does have a tutorial on, he also has a Gumroad. He does have a tutorial on brush efficiency, and I do recommend it. There is a way to find it. It's out there in the internet, by the way, so if you're not rich, I remember stumbling upon his work in the torrent world. So if you're kind of into that thing, which I'm sure you are, there's a means for that. And yeah, very painterly. I think this is one of the covers for that specific kind of tutorial. And again, he doesn't have to detail as much. He did go into detail or define more of the form in this face, because obviously this guy is way closer. This character right here obviously isn't human at all, based on the face, so that's kind of weird. Looks more like a Chewbacca kind of a facial structure. And again, I do like the way he handled the background here. He kind of used a mixer brush, I think, to kind of create that blended effect. Or he just kind of left the background as more of a silhouette. And he was able to achieve it kind of out of focus with just the values. So not everything has to be done with the blur effect, right? And as you can see, he doesn't really, it doesn't go into detail. I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but He's very kind of direct, dynamic, especially when it comes to his 2D paintings and sketches. His 2D stuff mostly feels like sketches to me, but they're actually kind of presentable, right? Because it's not overly ugly, you know? He kind of just gets it to a good enough point that it carries the idea, and it kind of makes it understandable enough. For example, you've got a few figures here to indicate some scale. They're obviously trying to explore something, right? And there's this kind of skeletal architectural structure, kind of embedded in some kind of mountain, right? And you don't need much to be able to convey a concept. And I think that's what really makes his work kind of, especially when it comes to his paintings, stand out, is because he doesn't use a lot of photo textures for his 2D paintings. He just kind of paints it, and it kind of shows you that, again, you don't need to have like all sorts of photo bashing techniques. You can just kind of paint the idea, and you can always like do some photo texturing later on or bashing and kind of render things out a bit more. But to kind of just convey a simple concept, you don't need much, and he's very efficient with the way he paints. Now for this frame, he did use the blur thing, which again I'm not into. I feel like the strokes are kind of wasted for me. It does have a nice effect. It kind of makes it more clear which thing is kind of the main focus, but he could have done it via just kind of painting. Yeah. And he does have more of a cinematic kind of feel. And when it comes to his 2D painting, he's very similar to Darek Zabrocki. I did an art review of Darek a few episodes back in the art review series. And yeah, they do have both similar styles. They have kind of an opaque look. When it comes to their work, it's kind of a mix between gouache and oils. However, Jama here does have more. He has more pieces where it's kind of framed in a cinematic kind of aspect ratio. And he does a lot more keyframes compared to Darek Zabrocki, based on their portfolio at the very least. That's what I've noticed. For example, here you can kind of simplify the background by just not detailing it as much, or you could kind of blend it. In this case, I think he just kind of dragged it, right? And it's kind of a great way, aside from blurring or using the blur effect, to kind of guide the focus of the viewer, right? Instead of just blurring everything. Maybe he did use some kind of mixer brush here, or a soft brush, I'm not sure, to kind of get the lighting. So these are some of his gargoyle designs. Very interesting, and again, very impressionistic. He doesn't go into detail, which again I do like, and you don't need much of like what am I trying to say? I think it is very useful and quite possible to be efficient with your brushstrokes. And I think Jama does show it in his work. The same way John Park does, because if you look at John Park's work, he's very efficient with his brushstrokes. And you can actually see most of his kind of big brushstrokes in his work. And Jama is kind of the same way, where he can kind of simplify an entire part of something with just one big brushstroke, right? And he also does use the mixer brush. It does help with the painterly effect of things. And yeah, very impressionistic. I love it. He did use the blur thing again in the background. And again, it's kind of a cinematic kind of keyframe. And Jama does do quite a few storyboards, colored storyboards even. And I think if you have kind of a nice background or understanding of storyboards, it's kind of an easy thing to do painted keyframes, because you kind of already have some basic understanding of cinematography, right? And yeah, so he's also kind of like Alexander Mandrajev, the guy we reviewed recently. And although Alexander is like way more advanced when it comes to keyframes, because Jama is kind of an all-around kind of guy. Like he can essentially do everything. I noticed in the background he didn't use the blur tool or the blue kind of effect. And you know, again, I prefer this kind of way of simplifying things that are not supposed to be in focus. Instead of just blurring it, you can just kind of simplify the values, or just reduce the amount of detail, and that's kind of enough to create some kind of focus, right? For example, even if this guy is way closer to you, even if this guy is in the foreground, just by making him more of a silhouette, your eye is guided to this kind of vehicle, right? Because obviously the vehicle is the main focus, so it's going to have a bit more detail. So yeah. I believe he did use, and I'm not sure how he actually did this, but maybe he did use the blending options and used the bevel kind of option to kind of create this kind of beveled texture. And maybe he did use the sharpen kind of effect to kind of just make it a bit more sharper. Not sure, but that's that's my guess. My educated artistic guess. This is very kind of artistic actually, right? Very abstract. Yeah, he does a lot of these. They're kind of not exactly storyboards, because they're kind of already kind of they're keyframes essentially, because they're a bit more detailed to me. But they look so cool. He does like using this flat brush that has a few spacing in between, and it does have a nice effect. Again, very opaque kind of work. He does use this opaque brush along with the mixer brush to kind of achieve this look. He's not the type of artist that builds up the paint, say like Feng Zhu or Anthony Jones or John Wallen Liberto. He is more like Derek Zabrocki again, very opaque looking work. That's a very ripped arm. Fuck. And yeah, these are some of his colored storyboards, and I think he did take this first one and develop it a bit more. And yeah, he did use the blur effect here for the background. I think it does make sense if you're trying to save time, but you can always simplify things with a simple big brush stroke and just reduce the intensity of it and the amount of detail. What's so interesting about these series of sketches is it shows you that you can actually do colored storyboards. Because for me, I've always thought of storyboards as black and white sketches, and these are sketches, of course, but they're colored, and you can actually achieve the same kind of thing with the added bonus of suggesting the color palette of the frame. And yeah, it's very interesting. If you kind of get the storyboard frame right in this kind of thumbnail stage, the moment you kind of bring it to a keyframe and just start painting over it, it just looks good, And yeah, I think I should do more thumbnails like this to kind of just explore my ideas and find the best one and pick one and develop that a bit more, But yeah, it shows you that you can actually do colored ones and painted ones, right? Some more black and white paintings. Again, it actually feels like a frame of some kind of film. This is what sets him apart from, say, Derek Zabrocki again, the cinematic kind of shot. He does have a few graphic brushes here. You can see it in the armor. I do like the way he did handle the background. He just kind of reduced the amount of detail. He didn't have to use the blur effect. In some parts you can actually see him use the mixer brush instead, which I think makes it look more cool and a bit more touchable, right? Because if it's kind of blurred in the background, or if you can see kind of a blurred part, it's almost as if you can't touch the painting, right? Like it doesn't feel full. That's just my kind of weird take on it. I think he did use a photo texture here in the beginning to kind of get the color palette right, and he did just color picked from that kind of warped photo and just painted over it. And yeah, and look at how he was able to achieve depth in this piece. Like, it actually looks big. It reminds me of the work of Satish Kumar. I did an art review of his work a few episodes back, and he was able to make his thumbnails look so big. Like, he can make a piece, a frame. Fuck, what am I trying to say? His work looks big even though it's a thumbnail. And I think it's because of the way he handles the... Like, he has a certain way of achieving an atmosphere and depth in his painting. And I think this is kind of a great example also of Jama Jurabaev's way of creating depth. Right? And you can see a lot of his brushstrokes even. And it's kind of a nice effect. And again, it looks very painterly. Maybe he did use a few mixer brushes here in the foreground, even here. And it looks very painterly to me. And I think that's what makes his work very, very appealing. So more Mayan stuff. Love the facial structure. Very native-ish. Very strong cheekbones. I know. And again, lots of mixer brush use here. And I think he only uses like essentially two main brushes. The kind of a flat brush that does have a few spacing bits in between, and the mixer brush. And it's very efficient, gets the job done. This one's more of a keyframe. I think he did use the blur thing a bit here. Maybe, I feel. But very nice kind of way of painting. It's a bit more detailed or more rendered in a way, the face. But yeah, still cool. So again, more of a storyboards keyframe shot of a dead guy. And yeah. And he did do... when you're trying to do like these sorts of particle things, whether it be dust or snow or rain, I think it makes sense to use the blur effect and kind of put all of these sort of effects in its own layer. I think that's the perfect time to use it. But for example, in this kind of background here, I wished I could have seen the sharpness of this brush spacing. That's kind of a natural occurrence when you're using a brush in a bigger size. And I do like the look of it, so when you're kind of using the blur tool, you're kind of taking away the sharpness of it. And yeah, just be wary of that. Make sure you're kind of deliberate with how you want your paintings to look like. In this case, it's more of a storyboard, so it makes sense, or a keyframe. And even the way sketches look very, very cool. It does have a very charcoal-ish kind of look. He does talk about abstraction in his work, where you essentially just have to kind of get the gist of something. It's kind of my understanding of the way he explains it. And I do like that kind of approach. It's very impressionistic. You're just trying to get the impression of the concept. And that's kind of enough, right? You can always use references later, you know, to kind of refine things and add details and stuff. But I think it does a good job, especially in the initial phase where he gets the impression of the concept, right? So this one is it's not typical in his work. It's a bit cleaner. It's still painted, but it's obviously way cleaner compared to his more painterly impressionistic stuff. But I still like it, and it deserves to be shown to the public, because this entire piece looks very, first of all, cinematic, just because of the frame use, the aspect ratio, right? It's kind of a cinematic frame. And also the way he was able to achieve depth in the painting. Like, this entire scene looks very, very large and big, even though it's kind of in a small canvas size or image size. It does feel like it's a snapshot of an entire kind of world, and that's really cool. And the way he also tackles light is very interesting. He doesn't show it as much in his more painterly stuff, because obviously it's not going to make as much sense. I mean, he could do it, but I think he wants to keep that painterly kind of look in his work when it comes to these sorts of when it comes to this kind of style. But for this one, and I think he also has another one. Well, this one's kind of the same. It's a bit more painterly, I feel, because you can see more of the mixer brush use here. But it does use the same kind of lighting effect. And even though you can see a bit of impressionism in his work, it's a bit cleaner compared to his usual stuff. I think he has one. Oh, this one's pretty cool. It's a grayscale, and you can actually see he hasn't used a lot of photos in this one. Maybe a few custom shapes, perhaps, for these sorts of cranes and shit. But essentially, he just used some kind of flat brush to kind of just get the silhouette, and a lot of soft brushes to kind of achieve that atmosphere and all sorts of lighting effects. And it looks really, really, again, big. I think it helps to add a few human figures to indicate some scale. But look at this. I mean, you can hardly see any kind of photo texture. And, oh, sorry about hitting the mic. But yeah, look at that. I think it also helps to kind of layer if you're trying to do a piece like this, it's kind of complicated in a way, because you have like a lot of overlapping shapes. And I think it helps to be fairly organized with your layering system in Photoshop, right? And the moment you kind of do the lighting and stuff, yeah, it does help to, for example, the way he did this kind of gradient for this side of this ship thing, it helps to have it constrained, or to be kind of masked, you know? So you can essentially just use some kind of clipping mask and paint within a certain kind of selection, right? But again, it looks really cool. He doesn't have a lot of these sort of concepts in this kind of style. A lot of his more 2D stuff is kind of painterly like this one. But it's nice seeing that he can do like different styles and approaches. Oh shit. So this one, it is a bit more impressionistic. You can see a lot more of his strokes here, and it kind of reminds me of the whole of this whole thing that's happening right now. Eventually, if you're someone who questions things, or if you're just not going to be easily swayed, you're probably going to end up in this cell, you know, to keep you safe and happy. And you know what, guys, just a kind of a side note, I'm actually I'm a bit scared with how things are kind of going, you know, with the amount of I don't know, it's very dystopian-esque. It used to be just in films, but being able to see it in reality is just fucking amazing, you know. It's kind of exciting at the same time because you have no idea how it's going to turn out. But again, look at the way he simplified the face. Even the entire suit, it's just one white silhouette, and then he added a few details, a few lines to indicate some parts of the suit. Even the perspective is kind of not fully correct, but it's enough to kind of convey the idea. And it shows you that you don't have to be like super refined in your perspective shots, in your painting style even. For as long as it conveys the idea, it's fine. I think I was trying to achieve, I'm not sure if this is for a game or some kind of trailer. I think I was trying to achieve a certain kind of visual style or look for this project. This is a very kind of apt illustration for these trying times. And again, he does use that same brush. It's kind of a flat brush. I'm not sure if it's in the directional mode in terms of its shape dynamics, but he does use that same brush. I think Victor Hugo Harmatiuk does have the same kind of brush. It's kind of a flat brush with some spacing in it. Some more chaos. Yes! Again, very impressionistic style. I love the way he handled the helmet here. And again, you don't have to fully define the face. Just get the kind of form of the eye socket and some suggestion of the nose or mouth. And that's kind of enough to suggest that it is some kind of human being, you know? I love the texture used here. That's kind of overlaid on the painting. So this is some kind of zombie, I think, because of the head, right? This guy is obviously infected with something. But in this case, it's actually way more intense, right? Because you can actually see it. So, oh, this is actually the mob. This reminds me of the mob mentality that's happening today. But I think he's going for the zombie kind of look here. I think he is going for a zombie kind of effect. But yeah, if you're not doing a specific something, you know, this is how people generally react, and it's very kind of illogical, by the way. But yeah, it's very, very, very realistic though. So that's kind of the sad part about it. Again, very nice keyframe or storyboard shot. This whole plane is essentially some kind of silhouette. You can even see the big brushstroke, right? That he used. It reminds me of Alexander Mandrajev again, because he does like to simplify. Like, some of his shots are very simple, but in terms of like the shape, but it's kind of enough to suggest a whole scene. So this is also a great example of that, and the way he and the way Jama also did the lighting here with the airport landing lights. Very nice kind of effect. I think he did use some kind of lens correction. You can see this kind of shift of green and red. Oh, I do think this is some kind of zombie-esque kind of thing. So this is the horde, and this is some kind of tank. The same kind of flat brush. Very impressionistic. And yeah. So this guy is obviously being, I don't know, maybe it's starting to kick in. The the virus, right? Oh, this is kind of another project of his, Space Hunters or something. I don't actually think he. I'm not sure if he used 3D in this one. I think most of it is actually more 2D. Look at that. Look at the way he simplified this entire scene. Again with that same brush. He does have a favorite brush, so it is very kind of opaque and very impressionistic. I mean, you can see a lot of his strokes here, right? And again, he does have a nice background or experience with cinematography, so his frames and paintings are going to look a bit more cinematic. Look at that. Even the color palette is very... I like that he does keep it the same. It makes sense because this is kind of just one project, right? Look at that. And again, not a lot of detail, but you can kind of get the feeling of the project concept. Look at that. It reminds me of another artist. He's not very well known. Kyle Canis Ellis. I did an art review of his work. I think it's because he doesn't have like a lot of posts on ArtStation, but he does have the kind of he's very good with keyframes as well. But yeah, look at that, it's so pretty. And he's essentially doing a kind of silhouette, right? And just adding a few more shapes, very rough shapes, within that silhouette. And he doesn't even fully clarify the edges, maybe the silhouette a bit, but even the whole silhouette of, say, the characters, they do have breaks in them. Some go kind of over or beyond the main shape, and some kind of cut through within it. So I think this is kind of a great example of impressionism, where he's just capturing the impression of the concept. It's not fully detailed, and it's not supposed to be. even this kind of design of this, I think this is some kind of gun. I do like the way he handled this kind of lens here. Wow, that's super cool. It helps to have some kind of reference, so it can kind of guide you as to where you can put the strokes, you know. Maybe he did use some kind of soft brush here for this side, but most of it is just using his, he's using a directional, it's a flat brush that's kind of set in a directional mode when it comes to its shape dynamics. So this guy has some kind of dog, robotic dog. He did use that blur thing again. A photo texture for the ground here. But look at that. And he did use a soft brush here for the glare. So that's nice. Yeah, look at that. Very, very impressionistic. And you can kind of pump out a lot of these in kind of one session. I'm actually not sure how long this like one frame would take for Jama. But I don't know, 30 minutes maybe? Is that too long? Or maybe 15 to 20 minutes perhaps? They're so cool. And you know what, maybe I should bring out more of this kind of impressionistic side of me, because I feel like whenever I'm trying to do like more defined work, more refined or defined work, I feel like I'm kind of losing the energy when I paint in that kind of way. I don't know, my heart doesn't feel good when I try to be like super detailed. I'm kind of losing the energy of the painting by doing that. And I think it's because I'm also influenced by Anthony Jones. And if you look at Anthony Jones's work, it looks really cool. And maybe I think I'm trying too hard to be him. And I think I did the same thing before with, because I was using kind of this horizontal flat brush, and I was trying too hard. I kind of realized that I was trying to be like Feng Zhu too much. And because it happens when you have like people you look up to, and especially if you're kind of I'm not necessarily a beginner, but I think I'm just struggling with my style or with my kind of artistic voice, and it is actually kind of important, I think, in this kind of community to be able to establish your artistic voice. I think Adam Duff has a few videos on it, discussing about that same idea. But yeah, these types of paintings really do appeal to me. Fuck, that looks cool as fuck. And I like how you use black here. It's not totally black, but it's kind of dark gray. Very heavy contrast, right? Yeah, that looks fucking awesome. Moving on. Oh, I did the same thing. Oh, okay. This one is actually a bit more. This one actually looks more like an oil painting. A different project of his. Yeah, these ones are actually very, very painterly and very kind of rough, and I think they work well for like storyboards, because you don't have to like do much in it. But yeah, I think even the way he paints does kind of signify some action, like something is moving. Like if you have kind of the right brush, you can kind of suggest some kind of movement. It helps to have a mixer brush, so you can kind of drag paint around. I think it helps to add movement, but even the brush itself is very kind of dynamic. And I like seeing the kind of brush spacing again. Looks really cool. Adds a bit of texture. These ones are actually more storyboards, colored ones, but they kind of get the idea of the shot, right? And again, you don't have to be clear with like the edges. And this kind of goes against what I would usually see in storyboards. Usually people would be a bit more detailed with the, say, the characters. Often they would actually kind of sketch the outline, and maybe use some markers for some shading. But for Jama here, he does have a very kind of an impressionistic storyboard, and I'm not sure if it's very useful for the storyboarding industry. Maybe people like it to be a bit more clear, but I think it works. If not a storyboard, as a thumbnail, he does have kind of a nice approach. Whoa! Nice side study of the head. Lots of canvas texture in the background, and he did use the mixer brush for the edge here of the chin and in some parts of the face. Oh, these are some of his manual sketches. Even his manual stuff looks really, really cool. Look at that. Very dynamic, very energetic. Even the silhouettes are very interesting. Wow, look at that. Fuck, look at that. Damn. Very nice thumbnails here in the background. Oops. Again, very awesome silhouettes. Look at that. Maybe he did use some watercolor here, perhaps. Not sure. It feels like watercolor to me. Oh, he does have like these sorts of they're a bit more refined paintings, but you can still tell the impressionism in them. Very, very strong strokes. You can see a lot of the painterly strokes here, and I think he did use some photos, but the fact that he was able to kind of overlap it with his own painting, it's almost hard to tell, right? And look at that, it just looks so freaking cool. And now I'm kind of inspired to like try his kind of look. This is so hard. Maybe you're kind of feeling the same way, where you have like all sorts of artists that you look up to and you're kind of just stuck or confused with how you want to do your own work. And because I'm influenced by a lot of folks, right? And I think I'm just trying to find my own voice for now, and yeah, eventually I'll figure it out. So but look at that, it's very dynamic. It's almost like a keyframe or shot from a film, right? I love the lighting here. Shh. Look at that. Jesus Christ. Now this one is some kind of Roman soldier. And this kind of shows you again also that when it comes to coming up with concepts, you don't have to overly detail everything. You just need to have enough indication of like shapes, forms, to kind of suggest the concept, right? And I think this helps you if you're kind of the impressionistic kind of guy, where you're not really into the whole detailing thing. I do suggest you try doing a few pieces where you kind of go into detail and kind of refine things, and you'll kind of realize if you're kind of into it or not. And I remember doing this character concept a few days ago, and I did enjoy it, but it kind of didn't feel right for me. So I think if you're trying to find your own artistic kind of voice, you need to be able to experiment a lot, and a lot of this is trial and error, and you kind of have no choice but to make mistakes. And the more you can just fail more, the more you can just make mistakes, the more you're able to adjust more quickly and make the right decision. And that's really only done by doing more paintings, more concepts, and yeah. Again, same style. Very, very impressionistic. Lots of beautiful textures here. Lots of canvas textures. I think he does sharpen his paintings afterward, because there is some kind of sharpness in his work. I'm not sure how he achieves this kind of texture effect. Maybe he does use the bevel thing in the blending options to kind of create some thickness a bit. And again, he does use the mixer brush. I think he did use a photo here and then just painted over it, right? And kind of make it his. Look at that. That is so cool. Oh, this actually reminds me of Dark Zabrocki, because Dark Zabrocki does have a similar kind of scene, except it's kind of it's a tank with spider legs. It's just kind of a walking kind of tank. But it does have kind of the same feeling and all. So yeah, look at the way he simplified the characters here. Oh my god, look at the amount of strokes used. Not a lot. Very, very basic, impressionistic, not very detailed, but just kind of enough to suggest this whole crowd of folks. And even this kind of thing in the back. It's kind of like a tank. Excuse me. And the cockpit is kind of on the side, right? Look at that. Look at how beautiful this thing is. If you had a portfolio of stuff like this, I think it's enough, you know? So I'm actually enjoying this art reviews myself, because it kind of inspires me to just make more stuff, and hopefully they inspire you as well to just keep going. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Do follow him on ArtStation, on Instagram as well. Check out some of his products on Gumroad, and yeah, keep going, keep painting, and stay free.